All right. Next on our agenda is our guest speaker panel. We are so pleased to welcome our guest speaker this evening, Brad Schrager and Steve Sebelius. Brad Schrager is with Bravo Schrager LLP and is an expert in politics and government practice. Thank you very much. And then we also have with us Steve Sebelius, our esteemed Nevada journalist, Steve Sebelius, former politics and government editor of the Review Journal. Gentlemen, welcome. Welcome very much. And our fabulous club secretary, Lani Paz, will be hosting the panel this evening. Thank you very much, Lani. And at that, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you. I'm going to move this over here. Thank you.
There are two microphones. The ball, which gets moved around, is for our Zoom friends so they can hear. And the microphone that I will be passing back and forth is for in-room. So Zoom people, if you cannot hear, put it in the chat and Chris and I won't ignore it. We'll try and do something to fix it. All right, thank you all so much for coming. My name is Lani Paz, and this panel discussion is something I really wanted to look at because there are charges, there are indictments, there are all kinds of news and then misinformation about what's going on. So I thought that we should take a hard look at the indictments of he who must not be named. Let's try to avoid saying his name. And then the very curious response that it seems like the more charges, the more proof, the more indictments, the more support, the more money, the more backing that he's getting. And it's very curious to me. So I would like to introduce Brad Schrager. Please introduce yourself, and then Steve Sebelius. Tell us a little bit about who you are and why you can speak on these matters.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for inviting me here tonight. It's actually really good to be here. My father would probably say I don't go to temple enough. So it's actually really good that it's here. I'm gonna let him know. Yes, Bradley Schrager. I'm a lawyer here in Las Vegas and have been for 15, 16 years. I specialize in election and political law. I represent candidates and parties and things of that nature. I've been the general counsel for the state Democratic Party for on and off for 15 years. Yay!
Yay.
Pro bono as well. That's a freebie. That's on me.
And
so,
we appreciate it.
We will see. Our topic here tonight is a complex one because I get questions all the time regarding, okay, what are the strongest cases? What speed are they going to take? What's the difference between the state and the federal indictments? What are these cases going to be over with by the time the primaries come, or by the time the election comes, or what happens if they're not over with by the time the election comes? So we can talk about all those things. My qualifications to speak on it, you can probably judge afterwards. We can take a poll whether it was worthwhile, but we'll try to get through it together because it's a complex set of issues that we can deal with at length tonight. So,
Steve.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me here, and thanks to Temple Sinai for hosting. I have been in journalism for about 30 years or so, and mostly here in Nevada. I came to Nevada in 1993. I've worked with Las Vegas Sun, Las Vegas City Life, and the Las Vegas Review Journal, as well as Channel 8. And so I've covered a lot of these things for a while. I'm not a lawyer, unlike Brad, although I've played one on TV and in the newspaper for quite some time. Learning on the job. Brad's been one of my professors in that endeavor, so we'll see how well he taught me tonight.
All right. Okay, I'm going to kick the ball off. Pedra, I have some handouts, if you can get them passed around. I did not make enough for everybody, so we'll share. And I will post it up on our website. And also for all of the folks in Zoom, we will try and get you a copy of it. But Brad, so I heard there's something going on in Hotlanta.
Yeah.
In Atlanta tomorrow. Can you explain what's going on? I hear there were a bunch of people that were mugshotted and we saw pictures everywhere. What's the story? What's happening?
Yeah. Yeah, those of you that have sort of seen the news yesterday and today have seen a steady stream of folks surrendering in the Fulton County case, the election tampering. The spectacle of a former president of the United States surrendering in a, he's sort of done that previously, right? We've seen him in the New York State Court. He's been to the federal courthouses. The Fulton County Jail is, let's say it's not the sort of marble temples of federal court that you're going to see. He's apparently going to be treated much like any other defendant, which is a good thing, because when you commit crimes in a jurisdiction, that's what happens. He's going to surrender. He's going to post either a cash bond of $200,000 or he's going to go to a bondsman and hand them $20,000 in cash and then have it posted for him. I don't know which one he's going to do. One of those two is going to happen. But he's going to be arraigned in what is the most complex of these four cases and the latest of these four cases. And we can go through all of it, but we're talking about 18 co-defendants facing incredibly serious charges, including state-based RICO, which is a very dangerous thing for any defendant. And so when people say, what's the most serious of these cases? The immediate answer is anything that's going to put you in jail for serious, right? But tomorrow is all these people that have been streaming in to get mugshotted are now not just co-defendants, they're potential informers, right? People could flip on them. I mean, I was talking with folks who said, some said charging 19 people, this is going to take forever, right? There's no way this is going to be done by election time, because there's all these people that can file motions and put these off. But at the same time, there's all these people who are now no longer thinking of themselves as Trump's buddy, and they're all going to be in it together. Now there's 18 other people who are thinking, how do I make this stop without me going to prison? So we'll see how it plays out. But out of all the mugshots you saw today, the most sought after one is going to be sometime tomorrow afternoon. Yeah. And it's literally going to be something we've never seen before. Yeah.
On the handout that we have, we're talking about number 4 election tampering in Georgia. Could you expand a bit on this and who you're talking about, who the other co-defendants are?
Well, it's some of them are fairly obscure and you wouldn't even know their names, but some of them are the all-stars of the election tampering greatest hits over the last few years. It's Rudy Giuliani, it's Mark Meadows, it's John Eastman, it's Sidney Powell, it's Jenna Ellis. It's all the people that have bugged the living hell out of you for years. And you've seen some of their mugshots earlier today. They are facing charges stemming from a conspiracy, an alleged charged conspiracy to tamper with and overturn the election results in the state of Georgia. And they involved the phone calls to the Secretary of State and the setting up of fake electors, which we were treated to here in Nevada as well, but they're facing criminal charges for that there. It has been wrapped up in a racketeering. I mean, when I said RICO, it's racketeering. It's a conspiracy to commit underlying felonies against honest services of elected officials. There's how many counts in this? 13 felony counts. From 5 to 20 years. a number of those counts, some of them for the full 20, some of them within that. But it is going to be a free-for-all for people to try and get deals, and all those deals are going to require testifying against main defendants. It seems fairly clear that the former president of the United States can't take a plea deal, right? He's not going to cop to it and then, you know, ask for a date when he can show up to state jail. That's not going to happen. So no matter what, he's going to be the last one standing. How many will be standing with him is an open question. But that's going to kick off tomorrow.
Steve, would you like to add on to that?
I will say that Fannie Willis did not leave any stone unturned in this indictment. She laid out a very elaborate case of each and every act that underlies the RICO statute, which is essentially a statute designed to combat ongoing criminal enterprises. This particular criminal enterprise was the overturning of the election results, not just in Georgia, but in several other states. And I think she was incredibly thorough in the investigation, led the grand jury through. There's pages, but there's individual acts. I think we got up to 100 and how many acts, individual acts. I think we got up to at least 150. I know that. And that includes phone calls, that includes false statements, that includes documents that were filed with knowledge of their falsity in court and other places. That includes the Trump electors signing fake certificates claiming that they were the duly authorized electors from Georgia, notwithstanding the fact that President Biden won the election in Georgia and President Trump lost the election in Georgia. This happened in a number of states, including right here in the state of Nevada. This indictment touches slightly on that and the contacts between Jim DeGraffenreid, who is the vice chair of the Nevada Republican Party, who has been called to testify not only for the January 6th Commission, in which he took the Fifth Amendment a number of times, probably 200 times, and then also before a grand jury where he was given limited immunity, where he could not invoke the Fifth Amendment and testify against, my understanding, some of these primary defendants in this case. So it's a very thorough indictment. And I think, interestingly enough, this and the January 6th indictment are unique. If you, the indictment in New York, Trump paying hush money payments and falsifying his business records to conceal those hush money payments. Has a rich man ever paid to cover up an affair before? Has that ever happened in history? That's as old as the Bible. That is very precedented. The DA there, DA Bragg, makes a good case that he is violated the law, although he's applying the law in a way it hasn't been applied before. So we'll see how that works. The second case, the classified documents case, is a little more serious. Now, we know that other politicians have kept classified documents improperly. President Biden did that. Former Vice President Pence did that. What makes Trump a little bit different is the extensive steps that he took to retain those documents, to lie to the FBI, to lie to the National Archives about his retention of those, to lie even to his own lawyers about how he had retained these documents. But again, not entirely unprecedented. His actions to conceal are unprecedented, but the retention of classified documents not unprecedented. What is unprecedented, in my view, after reading through all of these things and covering, this issue, is that never before in the history of the United States of America has a president, after losing an election, attempted such a wide-ranging conspiracy to overturn the results of a legitimate election. There have been allegations of cheating up to and during elections, but never has a president done what Donald Trump did after the election of 2020. Never has a president whipped up a crowd into a frenzy until they attacked and defaced the Capitol in a deadly riot. That has never happened before. Never has a president reached out to corruptly influence local officials. Never has a president had people sign fake certificates and send them to the archivist of the United States and the United States Senate, purporting to be legitimate documents. These things have never happened before. And we have to take action to make sure that they never happen again. To that end, the Nevada legislature in 2023 passed a law that would have made the signing of fake electoral certificates a felony.
Right.
This law passed the legislature, but was vetoed by the governor. And if you read his veto message, it was disingenuous to say the least. There was no good reason, and even the governor acknowledged it was a terrible crime. Yet he vetoed the bill that would have made it a felony. And set that law aside, right? There is a law on the books now here in the state of Nevada that makes filing a false instrument a felony. And one of the reasons the governor vetoed that bill is he said that the penalties were too tough. It was a category D felony. And he thought that was too tough. Well, there's a law in the books right now that makes filing a false instrument a category C felony. This law has been used before in the state of Nevada against a former county commissioner who some of you may recognize. Lynette Boggs McDonald was her name at the time, who falsely asserted that she lived in one location inside her district when in fact she lived in a separate location outside her district. She was charged with a felony. She had to plead that down to a misdemeanor so that she could later go to law school and then become a judge in Texas. That's true. It's true story. All true. All true.
That happened.
That could have been applied, and in other states, including Georgia, in this indictment is being applied against the fake electors. So again, the unprecedented nature of it, I think, is in these last two indictments. I'm not commenting on the strength of any of these cases, but I will say that the last two indictments challenge conduct that has never before happened in the United States of America. And if we're not careful, next time, who knows? It could be a Democrat doing it. Up until now, no one could conceive the possibility that this would happen until it did. And so we have to be ever mindful of the fact that this could happen again, and take action accordingly to make sure that it does not.
What I'd like to know a bit more about is the classified documents in marijuana. I mean, we saw him holding up papers showing different types of documents that he purported to be from foreign officials, foreign leaders. Then we've seen pictures of boxes being moved and transferred and then found in a bathroom, right? And then they swear that's all that they had. And then another call down there and whoops, we've got a few more. Can we speak a bit about that?
Sure. And actually, if you were to ask me to roughly rank these cases in their legal strength, this case, which was the second one brought, right? This is the one brought in by Jack Smith down in Florida, the Southern District of Florida. This is the one that is the clearest violation of law where the evidence is fairly obvious. That if you're serious about the law, this is the one that should be relatively simple and straightforward to charge and to win. Right? The law says you can't keep that stuff. You don't own that stuff. It belongs to the United States. It's important. This is why we have classified material. This is why we have a Presidential Records Act. Right. He obviously kept it. He obviously mishandled it. Yet now we are learning that he ordered underlings at his resorts to flood the room and overflow. You know the story, all the craziness. the problem, and there's problems with all these cases. Some of these cases are stronger legally than others. Some of them are sort of, there's weird things about where they are or the stuff you have to prove. This is the strongest one. You have the stuff, you shouldn't have it. There's nothing in law that says you can't have it. Waving it around is just icing on the cake, right? Even if he just had it under his bed, it would be felonious. However, this is brought in the Southern District of Florida, which is going to be submitted to a jury pool of uncertain allegiance.
Right.
So, you know, even the strongest case then has issues. This is one of the things. All four of these cases, we're going to watch them play out at the same time in different ways in different places, but they're all going to go in front of an eventually chosen jury who will get to see evidence, weigh it, talk with each other, and then go in a room and decide what to do. And in some ways, that's a beautiful thing. It's a terrifying thing for a defendant, no matter how smug you might be, that one of those people has to be my guy, right? One of these MAGA people, one of them is going to save me. You never know, because some people, when they get together and they're on a jury, they have an amazing capacity to do the right thing. So, you know, that's also true about grand juries. A grand jury in Georgia, you would have been fully justified in expecting that there would have been people in that group who would have said, you know what, we're not going to do this. But apparently we had unanimous consent on every single charge, because when faced with irrefutable evidence, or at least the evidence that was given at the time, right? There's a chance to refute it. That's what every defendant gets. People tend to do the right thing. So in that way, both the classified documents case, all of these cases, as Steve really alludes to, are fascinating tests of our democracy. Because while these are unprecedented here in this country, it would be a mistake, I think, to look at ourselves as exceptional, right? You know, I'm a student of politics and judicial systems around the world. Other places in the world look at this and say, okay, now it's your turn, but it's happened here before. It's happened in Brazil. Yes. It's happened in Argentina. It's happened in so many places where, you know, you thought it wouldn't happen to you. Well, you know, welcome to Uruguay. It happens. The test is what you do when it happens. And the strength or weakness of your institutions, both before and then afterwards, when you're coming out of it, that we all, you know, I mean, we may not like the outcomes of some of these things. But, you know, if you can root for one way or the other. You can think you would see it differently if you were in that room. But if you really have faith in the judicial system and in democracy, you will accept the outcomes of these proceedings in each place, because they are your peers who are in their rooms seeing that evidence and making their judgments. So, I mean, I'm going to be really interested in following this. And frankly, you know, I mean, thank you for calling me an expert. I have no idea what's going to happen. And in fact, nobody has any idea. The next 15 months are going to be insane on every single level. You are going to see things you never thought you'd see. But I mean, what we can do best is hope that good faith at least persists in that process.
Okay. Steve, a refrain that we have heard over and over again is that the Democrats, the liberals, the woke have weaponized our Justice Department, the FBI, the CIA, basically weaponized everybody against he who shall not be named and others within his party. And yet it seems to me it's a whole bunch of people that were appointed and approved by the GOP and actually by the former president himself. So it doesn't seem to make sense to me, but they're not here to please me. Could you speak on that?
Yeah, there have been people of both political parties specifically judges, who have ruled both for and against Trump in those cases, depending on the merits of each individual case. So you will hear about a Trump-appointed judge, ruling against Donald Trump on a particular thing. The thing about federal judges specifically, as many presidents have learned, is that just because a judge is appointed by a Republican or a Democrat does not necessarily mean they're going to be a Democratic or Republican judge. That lifetime appointment has a wonderful way of eliminating any need to hew to any kind of political bias, and allow those judges to freely decide their cases based on what they think the law should be and what the law says. In terms of weaponization, I think you've heard the phrase probably before that every accusation is a confession. And I think what you saw, pardon me, is former President Trump tried to weaponize the Department of Justice on his own. He demanded loyalty from James Comey,
Right.
who studiously avoided saying that he would give it. He was incensed when his initial Attorney General, whose name I escapes me. Yes, Jeff Sessions recused himself from a case under the rules. It was the proper decision to make. Here is my Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn is a famous fixer, disbarred attorney from New York City, who was famous for fighting everything on behalf of the Trump family. He wanted to, in the waning days of his presidency, President Trump wanted to appoint as the acting Attorney General of the United States someone who clearly advanced theories that were that comported with his view of the election, and they failed to do that. Once every other top official in the Justice Department said, "If you do this, we will resign." It will be like the Saturday Night Massacre with Richard Nixon. Now, who knew that Richard Nixon would fade into history as not the most criminal president that we have ever seen? But Tricky Dick is out of the basement now, because as I said before, and I got to keep repeating this, Richard Nixon never once, when he lost the election, even though he believed that he had been cheated out of the election by JFK's dad, he never was an illegitimate president. He never said that. If you go back and look at Nixon Kennedy debates, and then put that side by side with the debates that you saw between President Biden and President Trump in the last election, you will be shocked at how highbrow, respectful the Nixon Kennedy debates were, and how the candidates could speak extemporaneously without notes for minutes on end and know what they were talking about, as opposed to the constant interruptions and sound bites that you see in modern debates. It's like night and day, and we have lost something there. So I think I think it's it's a kind of a shame what has happened there. But I think we will see, as Bradley said, we will see what the outcome of some of these cases. We will test if the system can endure. I don't have as much faith because
well, I didn't say I had faith.
you have seen what President Trump and his co-conspirators have done to people like Ruby Freeman.
Right.
You have seen what they have done to figures in the FBI, to James Comey, to anyone, even former allies who dare break with Trump and say anything negative. You have seen how they are treated, but that's just the rhetoric. What you have also seen is January 6th, and you have seen how, speaking of weaponization, you have seen how an angry mob can be whipped up into a frenzy, a homicidal frenzy, simply at the command of former President Trump. It is scary.
It is.
It is something that I think is going to be in the back of the minds of, I really do hope and pray for the sake of our country that they do the right thing, that they live up to their oaths, and that they do justice in these cases, because the pressure to get this off their back, to get the target off their back, is going to be immense.
I have to quick announcement. In the handicap parking space, license YYB. So if that's you, you want to make sure that you can get out of here tonight. So that is a silver Honda Odyssey, lights on, license YYB. Uh-oh, I see people headed for the door, so.
So good.
All right. The other curious thing is a social response. There seems to be no wrong this man can do. He continues to gather support, gather political strength, and more importantly, gather money. He is a self-supported billionaire who can make people who make less than $50,000 a year to turn over money. What is the charisma? What is the logic here? Is it a sunk cost? Well, I've already supported him this much. He can't be wrong because that means I was wrong. Would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, no, that's, I think that last point's an excellent one. That sort of, I mean, how do you travel back the road you've traveled so far? Look, we all know people in our lives, whether they're haunting your Facebook groups, or they're on your next door app, or they're on TV, or they're just around you, right? We all know people, and we look at them and we wonder what happened to your faculties that have led you to believe this bullshit in this particular. I'm sorry, I'm in Temple. What has happened to you? And it's it's not necessarily class-based, so it's not necessarily just sort of like non-college educated men who are out there in the Midwest doing these things, the famous diner outside of Cleveland, wherever it is. It's folks that are otherwise used to be people you could talk to about politics and life.
And we all have them in our families,
Yep.
every single one of us.
That's right. Which, makes Thanksgivings what they are now. But, I mean, when I think about the psychology of it, I sort of understand a certain strata of people who think that government has never worked for them, that it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, that's no one's ever done anything for me. It's never served me properly. So at the very least, I want to see my enemies hurt, or the people that I am told are the ones that are taking things off of my dinner table, out of my family's future, whether they're immigrants or others or whoever they are, right? We want those people to be punished for what they've done to put me in the situation I am in life. But there's others who also just sort of have this faith or this sense that Trump isn't hurting me. My taxes got cut. I know plenty of smart, rich white folk who are like, 4 years, 8 years, what's the difference? Right? Stock market will be okay, I guess. What's the difference if some people I don't know don't get to vote or have to stand in line too long? My taxes will be okay, my 401k will be fine. What's it to me? But that's that's also a sign of what's happened to our sense of community and what we owe to each other in this country. And that's a much bigger problem than just what Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump's charisma, I don't understand it. Obviously, it exists. But, you know, he is, people say this all the time, and it's absolutely true. Whatever sickness he represents, he's just a symptom, right? And so when you say, you know, we have to be careful that this doesn't happen again, one thing pops into my head is that there's something in our American bloodstream now that is toxic, if not cancerous. And next time, whatever that looks like, it's not going to be a bunch of bumbling dummies like Rudy Giuliani and these stupid lawyers who like can't win a case, right? You know, fascists learn over time. They don't just go away. So, you know, I mean, I think we are entering a period of sustained political turbulence and, yes, violence that's going to be with us for a long time. And I don't have any answers on how to get that out of our bloodstream. Once it's in there, it's really hard to get rid of. So that's something that I think is going to be that we are stuck with until we figure out how to address the people that we now look at, like what alien world are you inhabiting to think this way? But until we learn how to bring them back, or if we're not going to bring them back, how to construct a society that can function with them among us, but not destroying us. That's exactly right. I don't know the answers to those things.
Steve, you want to take a crack at that?
Well, you asked what's the logic? It's not logic. It's emotional. Most everyone in politics makes based on emotion, not on logic. It's the cement of our civilization, which we arise from chaos using reason as our guide. But that's not a human philosophy. That's an alien philosophy. But it would solve a lot of problems, wouldn't it? If you had to prove every assertion you made, if you had to have facts to back up your opinions instead of just emotion, that would solve a lot of problems. But I don't see that happening in the United States of America in 2023.
Yeah.
I think modern politics comes down in many cases to a simple question: does this candidate hate the same people that I hate? And if the answer is yes, then that guy must be good. And if the candidate does not hate the same people I hate, well, then that's not somebody for me. I think it's important, though, more than anything else, I think it's important to understand the other side. And because a lot of times as Democrats, I'm sure you look at Republicans, you think, how can they believe that? How could they do that? How could people go to Carson City and set up a table and put bunting on it and have a flag and sign documents that they knew were false and send them to the United States archivist and the president of the Senate purporting to be real? How could they do those things? And you have to understand, put yourself in the shoes of the Republicans, understand them. I think rather than just look at them as some strange exotic animal you see in a zoo.
No, that's fair.
They believe, for example, that Democrats are corrupt, that all Democrats have been corrupt. LBJ, JFK, all the way through Barack Obama. They believe not only are they corrupt, but that they hate America. They want to fundamentally change America from what they believe is American exceptionalism, which is a very ill-defined it means, to a socialist utopia. They saw the Affordable Care Act through that lens. Just like in a previous generation, people thought FDR's Social Security was an homage to communism, or LBJ's Great Society was a step towards socialism. And frankly, they were, because those are socialist programs. They redistribute wealth from the people who have it to the people who need it. More importantly, the Republicans believe the Democrats stole a legitimate election from somebody who legitimately won this election. They believe that. Donald Trump believes that. One of these indictments charges that he willfully said that the election was stolen when he believed that it was not. I think that is going to be tough to prove. I went through that indictment with a fine-tooth comb and found only 2 instances where a prosecutor could even argue that Trump acknowledged in his own mind that he lost the election. In every other instance, he said he won.
Yeah.
I think he truly does believe it. Now, that doesn't get him off the hook in that case. And it also opens up a doorway to say that someone was so delusional that they would actually believe this in spite of all the evidence against it. And I mean all of the evidence against it. Is someone that delusional should not be the president of the United States of America. If I was Trump's lawyer, I would probably argue that case because your job is to keep him out of jail. I could say, yeah, the guy actually believed all of this stuff. I can't help it if he's a delusional person and probably should never be elected again. Just don't put him in jail. So when you consider Republicans and their mindset, you have to think, as crazy as you think they think you are just as crazy and deluded on the other side, covering up for Joe Biden and Hunter's laptop and Hillary's emails and all of the other things, the trail of bodies that Bill and Hillary have allegedly left in their wake. All of those things they think are very real, as every bit as real as the stolen election. And so when you understand that, that's the first step, I think, in trying to bridge some gaps, bridge some divides. I know that insulting them is not going to work. And as Bradley said, we have 2 choices. We can have a country that we all share, notwithstanding our differences, or we can have a country that we inhabit, and there are people who are left behind who are going to be a constant oppositional force with their own version of reality that is not shared by the rest of the country. That leads to civil war. That is a dangerous situation. I don't think that's a good idea. So we have no alternative but to build those bridges. And understanding the other side is the first step in doing that. But by the same token, that does not mean you accept their version of reality. That does not mean you accept that the election was stolen or any of the other fictions that they are purveying. And you have to stand tough in many of these situations, and hopefully get back a little bit, as we have here in the state of Nevada, to getting a more normal type Republican. Now, I know many people in this room probably don't have anything good to say about Joe Lombardo, but let me just offer you 2 words: Joey Gilbert. Okay, would that have been better?
No.
For the Democrats, absolutely would have been better. But Senator Canizaro's back there saying, "Oh, yes, it would. I would love that." 75 vetoes would be pale by comparison. It would not have been good. It would not have been better. And so, while it's tougher when you're running against a more normal Republican, you always want to run against the craziest Republican you possibly can. While it's tougher to do that, it's better for society. It's better for democracy.
Well, let me just add just one quick point, which is, I find it interesting that the people in this room are forced to think of themselves as the responsible ones, the ones who have to build the bridge to the other side. We've spent some time now, and people have spilled ink and time and all these things trying to figure out why these people think the way they do. I absolutely assure you, no one among their ranks is spending time worrying or thinking rationally about why you think the way you do. Mm-hmm. So building bridges is important, but there has to be some place for the bridge to land, right? And right now, that's really another major problem, is that nobody wants a bridge built to them.
Well, I think, hold on, we're gonna do Q&A. Oh, don't have to. We've got hands waving up, and I promise you, we will do a Q&A session. And we're gonna keep the timing, so we'll go about 10 more minutes, then we'll open it up. There've been many divisive things said, such as they are not just coming for me. they're coming for all of you, coming through me, where he's frightening other people, saying, I'm being victimized, but I'll sacrifice myself for you. That's one piece of rhetoric that really bothers me. The other one is emblazoned on all those red hats. Make America great again. And I kept saying, so it's been pretty good for me. And it implies that there was a loss that was given to a certain group of people. Well, it's not pie, folks. If you give other people rights, if you give other cultures, minorities, disadvantaged, more privilege, more equality, more land, more whatever, we're not taking it away from somebody else. Could you speak about the victimization, or at least the trying to scare people into feeling like they've been victimized, or they are being treated lesser now than they were in the past?
Yeah. Well, Lani, what you're talking about is not particularly new. It's sort of a classic. It's the classic formulation that, and we keep using the word fascist. You know what we mean? It's sort of there's a style of politics to prey upon that particular set of feelings in order to gain power and at least influence over that group. I mean, even if Trump never gets above the 42% or 36%, he takes tremendous comfort in the adoration of that small number, right? Which still has the power to affect elections and our society. But, the idea that things were better in the past is always with us, right? And portraying it as a zero-sum game,
Right.
that it is, what you don't have is now someone else's, implying that someone took it from you,
Right.
Illegitimately, is the classic setup to set people against each other, set communities against each other. But so much of it is imagined, but people are asking, why don't I have these things? Why isn't my community healthier? Why is life expectancy lower? Why haven't my wages gone up in now 60 years? Why are those things true? Who's the culprit? And it's hard for people to come up with, sociological, historical reasons for that. So when they're supplied by someone like Trump and his acolytes, it's easier. And it also, oddly enough, the breakdown of community is at some level spoken to by creating a community of other people who feel disinherited just like you. So the fact that you're pointing at Latinos, queer folk, African American, whatever the group is, if it helps you understand why you don't have the things you either want or feel like you used to have, and other people join with you, yes, me too, that's right, let's band together against, that is supplying a sense of community for those people who are essentially torn from whatever they feel their community was. So it feeds upon itself. This is we are reaching a point of it at the moment that is certainly greater than it has been in a very long time. But the thing we're talking about itself isn't any different than what people in New York were saying about the Irish in the 1840s, right? I mean, this repeats itself because not because history repeats itself automatically. It doesn't. It repeats itself because it works.
Yeah, no, this question's right in my wheelhouse. This question calls upon me to defend the zeitgeist of the mediocre white male, which I'm happy to do as a spokesman for that community. I will tell you, there are people who think things are worse now. And from the ridiculous to the sublime, like, why don't we have plastic straws anymore? I miss plastic straws. We have these stupid paper straws. Thanks a lot, Gavin Newsom. all the way to people like, oh, you know what? I didn't get that job because somebody else who was in affirmative action. That is a source of resentment, and it is so ironic. It's ironic to me that evangelical Christians will be persecuted while it's ironic to me that that white men who have had privilege for decades and who never questioned it, that was the social order of things, now are finally questioning it and finally saying, hey, what is going on here? You're right. It's not, you're not taking a piece of the pie. What we're doing is baking a bigger pie. Yes. So that everybody can get a piece, including people who have never gotten a piece before, like poor Milton in Office Space, who had to move his desk to the basement. And who was the epitome of this whole thing. And what did he do after that? He burned down the building like he said he always would. And that is what many people want to do now, because they see themselves as losing their rights. They see themselves as strangers in their own country, as ridiculous as that is. And so every monument of progress that we reach to them is a milepost of decline. You know, we have in Nevada, we have made amazing progress. We were the first female majority legislature.
Yay!
Senator Canzaro, who's in the back there, was the first female majority leader of the Nevada State Senate. It took until 2019, but it happened.
Yep.
We have, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there have been a couple changes on there, but I believe we have a female majority state Supreme Court.
Yes.
For a while there, we have female mayors of our biggest cities: Henderson, Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, the first African-American mayor, not only in North Las Vegas, but in any city in the state of Nevada. These things are good things. These things are marks of progress, and they'll really be marks of progress when we stop keeping track of them, because they happen so often. But to a certain segment of the community, it's unsettling, because it's not how they grew up. It's not what they recognize. Somebody once asked me a question, and it's a good question to ask. What have you really lost? What have you really lost because of this progress in society? Have you really lost more than we've gained collectively? I don't think people stop and ask that question, because I think the answer to the question is no. We've gained more collectively than we have when we have recognized, the rights of people to vote. When we make voting as easy as possible for every eligible person to be able to cast a ballot, which we have done here in the state of Nevada. Those were hard-won gains, and the Nevada legislature in the 2023 session were faced a number of ideas to roll some of that back. Every one of those things was beat back, and not a single voting right was rolled back in the state of Nevada. Those are all good things. Yeah. And so we need to build on that progress, and that sometimes is going to take taking a hard line. There is always room for compromise. It is better. The most durable change comes from compromise. But there are certain things that you can't roll back once you've gotten them. And so I think we need to keep those things in mind. Believe me, speaking again as a spokesman for the mediocre white male community, we will be just fine. We will be okay. As long as we've got delivery pizza, we've got beer, we've got In-N-Out now here in Nevada. Things are going to be okay. I think we're going to be okay.
All right, we are cutting it close on our 8:30 deadline, so I want to thank all of you for coming and to especially thank Steve Sebelius and Brad Schrager for coming and helping us understand this craziness. Now is let the pot, fill out your tickets. Let the pot.